Hi everyone, welcome to our first live Q&A from Mountain Wedding Concierge. Okay, I have a confession to make. I'm talking to myself right now because there's no one here. There's no one here, but I'm so excited. I'm gonna keep talking. You can't stop me. I'm just gonna give information out anyways. And I worked all weekend long and I have my glass of wine ready. So regardless of if anyone shows up, ladies, I'm having my glass of wine and I'm still gonna talk. I'm gonna talk because I know lots of questions that you might have. And even though everyone has forgotten about me and I'm here all alone with my wine, I'm still gonna share some information because I'm here. So why not? So one thing that a lot of couples ask me about is the wedding timeline, the day of wedding timeline. And sometimes they don't have a wedding planner that they're working with. So if you do have a wedding planner, that's great. I think wedding planners are worth their weight in gold. But if you don't, you can make a wedding timeline. It's very easy. If you go online, there's probably a million resources for wedding timeline builders. I know Wedding Wire has one. I'll put some in the links below this video because I'm going to post this on the Wedding Concierge site. But in any case, the thing you want to think about is how do you want to feel on your wedding day? Now, you want to look beautiful. You want to have plenty of time to relax and enjoy the day. So start early. That's my first tip, is to start early, way earlier than you think you need to start. So hair and makeup should be where you begin. And you can actually work backwards. If you know the time of the wedding ceremony, let's say, for instance, your wedding ceremony starts at 3. So that's where you could start, 3 o'clock ceremony. That's one place and space and time you know you need to be. That's important. So work backwards from there. You want to have your hair and makeup as early as possible. A lot of times they will come very early. It takes about 90 minutes to 2 hours, maybe even longer, depending on your hairstyle, to get your hair and makeup done. And I know that sounds like a long time, but the time goes by like that. So plan 3 hours for your hair and makeup and buffer in time everywhere. So if your hair and makeup is supposed to start at 8, then give yourself 8, 9, 10, till 10:30 at least. 11 if you want to buffer in 30 minutes there. So from 8 till 11, hair and makeup. Okay, now as a photographer, we don't often come in for the whole hair and makeup. I know a lot of brides are concerned that they don't want a lot of pictures taken while their hair and makeup is being done, while their face isn't on. And honestly, a lot of times we just come in for like the last half hour and we'll catch your hair right at the end when she'll just like spray some hairspray on it, and we'll catch her just putting blush on and lipstick, and most of your face is done already, so you don't have to worry about that. It really only takes about maybe 20 minutes, but your wedding photographer will probably come a good hour beforehand, just to be ready. I know that's what we do. I would rather show up early and have the time to unpack all my stuff and be ready than to run in and try and get everything I need to do done in 20 minutes. But do know that hair and makeup, your photographer will probably be doing your detail shots during that time as well. So it's not all just them taking pictures of you and your hair and makeup. They'll be getting your dress, your shoes, your stationery, all the details of your wedding during that time. Okay, so if you have, say, a wedding party, and they're all getting their hair and makeup done as well, and you have a stylist who's coming to your home or hotel, then have your bridesmaids and your mom and your mother-in-law or whoever's getting their hair done, have them go first so that you're last. And the reason we want to do this is that when your photographer comes, your bridesmaids and all of your family are dressed and ready. Their makeup is on, their hair is done, they're dressed and ready. sorry. Hey, Baron, can you keep it down, baby? Anyways, make sure that they're dressed and ready so that you can have them in their stuff, and it just makes the pictures look so much better. Now, sometimes brides will have cute little outfits that they've made for their bridesmaids, like little silk robes that say bride and bridesmaid and stuff like that. And that's so much fun to work with. Your photographer will take advantage of that. And if you've gone through the trouble of making those little details, then of course we want to shoot it, but they'll at least have their hair and makeup done. Saves so much time. So you're last, and that also helps you plan the best use of your wedding photographer's time. So they're not coming in way early, and then, you know, if you only have 6 hours or 8 hours and you know you're going to have a long day, you want to make sure that you're going to have coverage through everything that you need right to the end of the day. So if you have your mom and everybody else start their hair and makeup first, that works out great. Okay, so give yourself 3 hours. Now, if you have a big wedding party and you know that you want to do portraits before your wedding party, plan that in. Give yourself at least an hour for that. And if you don't use all that time, then that's fine. You're just running ahead of schedule, and running ahead of schedule is never a problem. Okay, if you're running ahead of schedule, you can grab something to eat. You can just kick back with your girls. You can get to the site on time a little bit early. Your stress level is really so much easier. And that's the name of the game in planning your wedding timeline, is to give yourself enough time so that you don't feel rushed and you don't feel stressed. Okay, what else? Just want to make sure no one's trying to come into the group, because I really don't want to be all alone here, but I'm going to continue. Wait for one. Okay, so we're looking at 8 o'clock start, 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. 11 o'clock, hair and makeup is done. Your photographer will want to get probably some shots of you and your bridesmaids, or of you and your mom and dad. Definitely like your mom and dad coming in to see you for the first time in your wedding gown. It's a great shot to get your dad coming in and seeing you in your wedding gown, because if he cries, that's just adorable. And those make such great emotive pictures. And a lot of times brides will say, well, do I need to have you there for the getting ready? And my answer to that question is always an emphatic yes, because don't think of it so much as getting ready. Think of it as the calm before the storm. Once you hit the ceremony, the day is going to go by so fast. It's going to go by in a whirlwind. So this is a great opportunity to get shots of you while you're still relaxed. The anxiety is high, and by anxiety, I mean excitement, hopefully, just it's excitement. Excitement is high, you're with your family. It's a great time to get really emotional pictures. Your bridesmaids are doing up your dress. There's a lot of really beautiful storytelling that happens during the getting ready time of the day. And if you're going to get an album, and I do recommend you get an album, then it kind of documents, it gives your photographer enough to document your whole wedding day. So it really adds something to the final art product at the end. Okay, so if you're going to have a sneak peek, in that you're going to have a first look and see your spouse before the ceremony, that's a very popular thing to do. A lot of couples opt to do this for a couple of reasons. One, it's very relaxing for them to touch base with each other, to just see each other and have like 15, 20, maybe an hour. It depends on you, worth of time before the ceremony to just touch base with each other. You can make your first viewing special in some way. You know, we like to blindfold the groom and we choose a nice location and have our brides come up and unblindfold the groom, and that's really nice. And we bring champagne too, so they can have a little toast to calm the nerves, which is helpful. And it makes for really nice photos. So it's a great photo op. Now, I know that there's a lot of traditionalist brides out there who are going to be like, Shirleen, I don't want to see my spouse before the ceremony at all. I'm afraid to even run into them in the hallway of where we stay. And that's fine too. I was like that. I didn't want to do a first look. I wanted the first time Troy to see me was walking down the aisle, and it was, for me, that was how I really wanted to do it. But as a photographer, I recommend doing a first look because I noticed that it does relax brides and grooms. If you think you're going to be nervous on your wedding day, and seeing your spouse, your future spouse, will help you calm down, then maybe that's something to think about. So in your timeline, give yourself 90 minutes for that. And again, you may not need all that time, but you're always buffering 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. It's good to buffer. You can never buffer too much because, like I said, if you're running ahead of schedule, that's not a problem. Okay, so we're looking at 11 o'clock to 12:30 for a first look. If you're not doing a first look, then you don't have to worry about that time. That can be time to do wedding party pictures, pictures with your family. That could be a time your photographers do detail shots. It can just be downtime. It's up to you. So if you're not going to do a first look, minus 90 minutes, you have to give yourself enough time to get to your wedding ceremony. So if you're getting ready in the same location where you're having your ceremony, that's nice because you don't have to buffer in that time. If you're getting married in Banff, everything is reasonably close, but in the summer, sometimes it can take 15, 20 minutes to cross town, which is, I'm from LA. Crossing town usually takes, days. But in Banff, you'd be surprised. It can get pretty busy, especially if you get behind the train. If you're on the wrong side of the train tracks, like if you're staying at the Juniper and you need to get into the township, or you're in the township and you're having your ceremony out in a field like the Mount Norquay Meadow or something like that, just give yourself at least 15 minutes. I'd say 20 minutes to get to where you need to go, get parked, all that stuff. What else? Okay, so the ceremony. Now, if you're having a church ceremony, they're usually about an hour. It depends on if it's how religious it is. Roman Catholic ceremonies often have the Eucharist, so that can go like an hour, almost to 90 minutes. If you have an officiant and you're doing something outside or with any kind of wedding commissioner, they're usually very on time. And it's not usually more than 25 minutes tops. So you only need to book about 30 minutes for your wedding ceremony if you have an officiant. Now, receiving lines have kind of gone out of style. They're not the big events that they used to be like 10 years ago, but they do still happen. They happen spontaneously only because all of your friends and family are going to be so excited for you. They're going to want to come over and congratulate you. They're going to want to hug you. They're going to want to chat with you. So factor in that. You're not going to be able to end the ceremony and rush right into your family portraits. And nor should your photographer try and get you to rush through there, because that's a nice time. You're really excited and you want to say hi to your friends, and a receiving line is going to kind of form of its own accord anyways. And that's going to be about 20 to 30 minutes right there. It doesn't have to be, can be 10 minutes, but like I said, buffer in that time. That's also a great time for your photographer to catch a lot of really cool candids, because it's a low-hanging fruit. You're going to be beaming and everyone's going to be hugging you, and there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in a photojournalistic kind of way. And that's a really nice thing to get when you see your wedding photos, all the just spontaneous moments that are unscripted and unplanned. And that's a really beautiful time right after the wedding to grab those. Some brides and grooms choose to have a toast right after their wedding. And so that's going to be another 40 minutes. It may not be that long, but factor in that much time after your if you're going to have a toast after your ceremony. Then usually when everyone's greeted you and a certain amount of time has gone by, your photographer will kind of remind you based on your timeline, and you should be sharing this timeline with your photographer. In fact, this should be one of the first things you do with your photographer, is go over your expectations of what you'd like to do on your wedding day and come up with a timeline. And that will be the best way for your photographer to suggest to you how much coverage you need. based on your wedding timeline. So eventually your photographer will give you some time to just chill out with your friends, but then they'll want to get the family portraits out of the way, especially if you have elderly, like grandma and grandpa are there, or if it's cold, or if you have little kids, you want to get those family portraits done pretty quick so parents with little kids can get the kids back to their home, back to the hotel, get them situated. If you have your grandma there, then we can get grandma back inside, because it's Canada, let's face it, it's cold. Even in the summer, it can get really chilly, or it might be rainy. So you want to take care of the family portraits. It's a good idea, and your photographer will know this, but it's a good idea to start big and then move down to the smaller groupings so you can let people go as you finish with the family portraits. Family portraits, if you don't have a large family, you should be able to do them in about 30 minutes. Sometimes it might take longer if you have a lot of groupings that you do want to get pictures of, then give yourself at least 60 minutes for that. It's great to let your photographer know what those groupings are. I mean, as wedding photographers, there's a traditional grouping that we know to do, like everybody, the groom's family with the bride, the bride's family with the groom, siblings. There's a rhyme and reason to it that photographers are very familiar with and can move through quite quickly. But if you have groupings that may be outside of that traditional, outside of the traditional pictures that you get, then it would be a good idea to write those groups down and send that to your photographer beforehand. And that way they will schedule extra time in to make sure that they get those shots. And it's also a good idea to send the family groupings to them beforehand in any case, so that they don't miss any shots, because you're going to be really excited and you're going to want to get going. And like, the family portraits aren't necessarily the most exciting part of the day, but they are really important. And I hate to be morbid, but the minute anybody passes away, those pictures are going to be so important to you. So don't rush through your family portraits. Make sure that you get really beautiful family portraits. Take the time to do them. They don't take that long, but if you're prepared, they'll go by even faster. And another tip is to help your photographer by having someone who's familiar with both the groom and the brides, or the bride and the bride, and the groom and the grooms, whatever blows your hair back, however you're doing this, both partners, family, someone who knows both partners' family, who is extroverted and has a loud voice is even better, to help organize the groups, so that your photographer isn't screaming for like Aunt May and she doesn't know who Aunt May is, right? So don't have it be anyone in, like, no one, like, don't have it be you or your spouse or your best man or your maid of honor, because they've got enough to do. Have it be, and this is nice if you have someone and you want to include them in the wedding, but you don't really know how, then they really enjoy feeling important. So if you have, I don't know, a sister-in-law or an uncle or somebody that you can give this job to, that would really help. And it makes things go by a lot smoother if the photographer can just turn to someone that you've designated to help them get the family portrait pictures organized. Because it's like herding cats, it is. And if it's dreary or wet or cold, it's like herding dreary, wet cats. So you want to get through this pretty quick. That it's usually done right where your ceremony is held. So you don't have to buffer too much time around that, aside from if you're having a toast or the receiving line or people congratulating you. Because photographers, they'll usually move you along. They'll usually be like, okay, we need to get moving for your portrait tour, because that's where the best pictures are going to come from. The portrait tour, you want to invest some time in that, because those are going to be the pictures of you and your spouse. Those are going to be the ones that are directed and posed and lit beautifully. And those are the ones that are going to be the big showstopper pages in your albums. And they'll also be the ones that are the works of art that you want to hang in your house. They're not going to be like candid shots. There probably won't be. That's the time when you get all those beautiful shots. We take up to 3 hours to get those shots. In fact, sometimes we do a whole nother session after the wedding to get those shots. That's how important they are for us. I mean, we specialize in that kind of portraiture. Any photographer, I think, is going to want at least, well, they're going to want as much time as you give them, right? Like 90 minutes is a pretty reasonable time to allocate. But if you're getting married in the Banff area, it is so beautiful here, and there are so many locations where your photographers can take you. I would give them at least 2 hours. The question is, how long do you want to be away from your wedding and from your guests? Because if you're taking two hours plus for your wedding pictures, for your portraits, that's time you're not with your wedding guests. So usually brides and grooms or couples will have a cocktail hour where their guests can go hang out and have cocktails and celebrate while you're finishing up your wedding portraits. So that's very likely to be the scenario. Know that you probably won't catch any of that wedding cocktail hour yourself. So if that's a big deal to you, if you really want to be there for the cocktail hour with your guests and you want to spend as much time as possible with your wedding guests, and you don't want to spend 2 hours away from your wedding doing your portraits, you might want to look at doing a post-wedding portrait session. You can do it the day after, is popular, because your hair actually might, they put so much hairspray in your hair, it might actually still look presentable. Or you could do it, you can do it whenever afterwards, but that's something to think about. We like to strike while the iron's hot and do it. If not the next day, then the day after that, like close to your wedding, so you still feel the excitement of being just married. Okay, so allow yourself about 90 minutes for that. I'll put an example of a wedding day timeline in below this video. So after that, so once you finish up with that, it's nice to buffer. Oh, you're always buffering. It's nice to buffer about 15, 20 minutes in between when you finish up with your wedding portraits and before you go to your reception. And that's because you might be tired. It's a good time to grab a little snack, just freshen up. Just have a moment with your spouse, with your new spouse, to just be like, okay, let's breathe, hold hands, have a little snuggle, have a hug, and then, okay, we're gonna face our guests, because once you walk into that room, it's go time. It's go time, and it's go time to the end. And honestly, you won't even remember what happens after this. I had no idea. I woke up the next day after my wedding, starving, exhausted, completely happy, but we were scratching our heads like, what just happened? Do you remember any of it? I don't remember any of it. That's kind of the feeling you'll have. In fact, Troy ate so much food. Like, he's not a big eater. He ate so much food the next day. I actually thought that maybe it had something to do with being married to me, but he must have been more nervous than he let on. Anyways, okay, so give yourself a little time before you enter. So when you enter, here's another thing. Brides and couples sometimes will enter and go right into their first dance. That's one way of doing it. It makes kind of a spectacular entrance, which is great. That's one way to do it. If you are trying to save on your wedding coverage by not having the photographer there all evening, it's a good way to get the first dance going so that you know your photographer is going to be there. Some people do that. Other people come in, they're announced, they announce the bridal party, and then they'll announce you, and then you sit right down to dinner. So that's a little bit more traditional way of doing it, but you can come in and do your first dance, and you can do whatever you want. It's your wedding. Okay, so dinner, I'll allow 90 minutes for dinner, and please do, if you're gonna have people do speeches, and trust me, they're gonna do speeches. If you assign people to do speeches and a lot of time for it, have it be during dinner, because speeches can notoriously take longer than people think they're gonna do. Everyone's excited, they get the mic in their hand, and all they wanna do is shower you with love, orally. Lots of love. It can take a long time. You're looking at your clock. You don't want to have people waiting for dinner while the speeches are going on. So just go ahead, start dinner, have the speeches going on during dinner. It happens all the time. It's a great way to kill two birds with one stone, because your photographers aren't really going to be doing, there's not much for them to shoot while people are eating. We don't want to get, they're like pictures, not interested. But we do want to get the speeches. So it's a good time to do both at that time. And even if you don't have speeches planned, trust me, people are going to grab the mic and they are going to shower you with love. Your mom and dad and sisters and best friends, they have been waiting a long time for your wedding and to say a speech. So whether you plan it or not, allocate a little time, because people will want to do that. I've never been to a wedding where impromptu speeches didn't just happen, even if the couple didn't. They were like, no, we're not going to do speeches. People will grab the mic and do speeches. They love you. They want to share their love with you. Okay, so after that, so dinner and speeches together, very important. After that are the more traditional things. If you're going to have a cake cutting, that's usually about 30 minutes after dinner ends. The waiting staff of your venue will have to clear away all the dishes. So that takes some time, and then they'll cut the cake and bring it out. Although you'll cut the cake and you'll cut the first piece, and then they will cut everything else and bring it out. So that's the cake cutting. And then usually that's the second opportunity if you're going to do a first dance, is after like a half hour after dinner. Like, let everyone digest, everyone kind of takes a little break, mingles around, grabs a drink, and then they clear the space and set up for your first dance. So there's the first dance that isn't very long, so you really don't have to allocate a lot of time for it. Like, I say 15 minutes for your first dance, and if you're going to do dances like mother with her father and groom with his mother, parent dances, stuff like that, it really only takes about 10-15 minutes. Please do let your photographers know when you're going to do your first dance. The lighting is notoriously horrible at that time. It's very dark, and they will need to set up. So please don't, like, it's like we have heart attacks when we finally get to sit down and we're shoving our mouths full of food because we haven't eaten all day, and then it's now the first dance and we're like, so please give your photographer a heads up. Like, we're going to do the first dance when we come in, and we're going to do the first dance after dinner, and then go tell them, give them like a 10-minute, hey, we're thinking we're going to do the first dance in about 5-10 minutes, just giving you a heads up. The more you give your photographer a heads up, the better pictures they're going to make for you. So it's in your own best interest to help us out. Okay, after that, some brides still do the Garter Tour. The New Englander in me just came out. This is such a hard word to say if you're from New England. The Garter toss. Garter toss. I want to say Garter toss. Anyways, that's just my New England accent. And the bouquet toss. Yeah, after that, it's just candid fun time. So hopefully COVID will allow us to have receptions again, because that's a lot of fun. And that's another place where couples underestimate having a photographer there, because those are some of the best shots. Like, by the time you have your first dance done, you can completely relax, because you're kind of out of the spotlight at that point. I mean, you're still in the spotlight, but at that point, everything's candid and relaxed, and dance floor shots are hysterical. So you want your photographer to at least spend 30 minutes at the minimum to just capture some of that stuff. Now, I know in COVID, we're not really having receptions anymore, so your timeline is going to look completely different. And a lot of people can't even have dinners together. So it would be pretty much the same right up until portrait, like right after your portrait tour. Lately during COVID, we've been leaving our brides and grooms, dropping them off at the where they're meeting their family for dinner, and they're not doing speeches and dancing and anything like that. So hopefully COVID will be coming to an end so we can continue to dance. And I hope that helps you organize your wedding timeline. And like I said, I'll send some links at the bottom of this to some timeline builders, and I will put my own example timeline And so that's the first Q&A, even though I was all by myself and I had to answer my own questions. I'm secure enough to talk to myself. Okay. Thanks for coming. Please join me next time I do this. I'd rather answer your questions than the questions I think you might have. Have a good night.